Time to smash it up with two people from Warchant.com who are in Tallahassee and saw practice today. This is an awesome show that we're going to be able to do here in the next hour. Alongside managing editor of Warchant.com, Ira Schoffel, my name is Tom Lang. And again, this is the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. More on Russ in a moment. I know just like a lot of people out there, Russ is excited for the season to begin. Ira, I'm excited to talk with you today because we got to watch practice together, and I've been waiting a long time to get down here to see Florida State hit the practice fields. How's it going this evening, first of all? And, your thoughts on the weekend where you get a bit of a breather away from the program and you get to come back reinvigorated on a Monday morning.
Yeah, man, I was glad to have you back. We got your trench observations back up on the site. People will be excited about that. We've tried to do a little bit here or there, but I don't think anybody does it quite like you, Tom. So I think the FSU Warchant contingent will be happy to have you back. And it was good practice. I thought, the defense continues to set the tone. But I thought it was a good practice overall and continued. I thought Mike Norvell seemed to be in a great mood after the scrimmage on Saturday. And I think he's pretty happy with where this team is. There's still a little less than 2 weeks before the season opener, but I feel like seems like they have a pretty good feel for where they're at.
And we'll get Ira's thoughts here in just a minute on where Florida State is at. This is day 15 of fall camp. They're starting install for Georgia Tech. And Ira, you were there last week. Through post-hurricane weather and then over out to Jacksonville for a couple of days. So I'm curious to think where you believe this team is relative to maybe some of its predecessors. But again, we're going to be taking your questions here. We're going to be taking your questions here on Warchant TV on the Monday Smash in the back half of the program. So if you want to file some questions into the chat, come on in, hit the like button, subscribe to Warchant TV. It's totally free. Do all of those things. Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes will star those questions, and we'll get to those as we wrap up the show, the back half of the show tonight. But Ira, again, last week was a busy one. Again, you got to stress about making sure that your home is prepared in case Tallahassee gets hit by a tropical weather event. And then the next thing you know, a couple of days later, you're out on the east coast of the state in the Jacksonville Jaguars facility one day, UNF the next day. You saw an awful lot of Florida State getting after it in the last week. Where do you feel that this team stands right now, and how would you assess them after they went through a grueling week and then they're back at it today?
First of all, real cool that Ben put that up there. Thanks for stopping by, Freddie Stevenson. Checking in on the Noles.
Oh, my God. How's it going, Freddie?
Your guy from back in the day. And Freddie's got his own podcast people should check out. He's doing a lot of interviews. I think it's Trials to Triumph is his podcast. It's over on, you can watch it also on YouTube, so you can check that out. Thanks for stopping by, Freddie. I think it, I think the physicality's been good. I think that, I think I continue what I said from last week, that I've really at the point now where I just feel really, really good about this defense. I think this defensive front is got a chance to be dominant. I love the secondary. I think the secondary might be my favorite position on the entire team. When you go from not just the top 4 or 5 guys that are going to be starting, but going down the line to, 12, 13, the guys that are even freshman DBs, I think have been real impressive. So that group, I think, is got a chance to be excellent. And then the linebackers, when you bring in Cam Riley and you return DJ Lundy, and then you see the way Blake Nicholson and Cryer and those guys are starting to play, Omar Graham, you feel really good about that linebacker core. So I think that defense, man, there's not a lot of weaknesses on that defense. And then today, Kevin Noles reminds everybody he's still in that secondary as well. I think a lot of people expect Earl Little to win that nickel job, but Kevin Noles sounds like he had a great interception in the scrimmage, and they had 2 interceptions today, and also a couple of pass breakups. So he's playing really well. So that group is just really impressive. So, I still think they're the strength of this team, but I really want to just see this offense play against somebody else. I think there's some talent there on offense. I think the offensive line is going to be really good. I love the running game. I think DJ has played well. I want to see this offense against another team because I think that defense is going to be outstanding.
Yeah, this was one thing from early on in 11-on-11 today, Ira, and it happened again later in practice. There were sequences where I thought the pocket collapsed and DJ or whoever the quarterback was needed to speed it up and get the ball out. But I thought today there was actually an awful lot of time given, largely speaking to the quarterback, chances to scan down the field, especially DJ. I thought he had enough time often. But when you're holding the ball and it's 1 tick and 2 ticks and 3, and the ball's not coming out, that could be a couple of things. It could be that a receiver might not be where they're supposed to be, or it could be that there's just straight good coverage down the field. And I thought while there were some pressures for the defensive line today, when I was watching the two lines go to battle throughout the day, I thought they were pretty good in pass protection. So it's almost like you're getting two things out of a play that are quite positive. It's just that, again, if this secondary is as good as they look to us against these receivers and they play that way against other teams, then you're right. There's a chance that Florida State's offense could be fairly explosive when they take on a Georgia Tech, a Boston College, and a Memphis in the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, now Alex Atkins made a good point the other day when we spoke to him after the scrimmage. He said that he likes to give Shaheem Brown grief because, yeah, man, you guys are locking us down sometimes, but you know all our plays, you know our signals, you know what we're trying to run. Yeah. You know, there are times where, to your point, it's not like DJ's dropping back and guys are running open and he's just not seeing it. A lot of times, you know, these guys are plastered, and, you know, whether that's because these DBs are just that athletic and that dynamic, or whether it's because they've seen it all so much that they really know, or they figured out all the tendencies from these receivers, or they just know the calls so they know where to be. Either way, you just don't see a lot of guys running open. Now, you know, occasionally, you know, you'll see either the defensive back make a wrong read, or you'll see occasionally a busted coverage, but not very often.
Yep.
And occasionally you'll see, you know, something spring free right off the bat. You know, I thought Luke Kromenhoek and Brock Glenn a couple times today saw things early, got the ball out of their hands quickly. I didn't see quite as much of that out of DJ, but a lot of what they were doing also was situationally. And so if they're in 3rd and long, which is what some of the situations they did today, you can't just dump it off for a 4-yard gain. You've got to let that play develop. Like you said, the pass protection was there. Now you got to get somebody open. And a lot of these plays, the quarterbacks are having to eat it because there's just nothing open.
Yeah, and to that point on the offensive line, you know, that they were providing DJ some time today. I really, last year, I think they had 7/8 players that I know that they had been talking about, or they want an 8-man rotation. This is ideally what they want to have. And in 2023, I thought it was right on that number, 7 or 8. I really think you could get into the double digits this year of guys that can be okay. I'm not saying that it's, you know, one guy goes out and it's his equal comes off of the sideline, but you're not going to feel it like Florida State fans know. We know this feeling over the last few years that if so-and-so is not available at left guard or so-and-so is not available at right tackle, you know, it just all is almost lost in that half of the line of scrimmage. I think they got upwards of 10, maybe with a little bit of development and time, closer to a dozen people. As long as they all stay healthy throughout the season, this is a much deeper group than last year's offensive line.
I'm glad you just said that last part, because I actually added that to your observations that are up on the site now. Because you said that you think there's more than there has been in the past,
yeah.
And I added in. I said it could be 10 or more, because it really could. I mean, I was watching today. You and I weren't even standing together, but there were a couple times I was watching today that second offensive line and thinking to myself, any of those guys could step in and you would not feel bad about it. You would not be overly concerned about it. Now you wouldn't want the whole second 5 to be out there probably a lot, but you wouldn't be upset with any of them individually. And honestly, there might be, like you said, there might be 1 or 2 more guys behind them that are really coming on. It's a good group. And the other observation you had in the notes, which I'm glad you pointed out, because, and I think it stood out to you because this was your first practice. It's something in a while. This was something that stood out to me all camp, but I just haven't. I don't know. It's not something that I've decided to write about, but I think you nailed it. Maurice Smith has looked great. Knock on wood. I mean, he has been not just great because he's a 6-year guy or 5th-year guy and he knows the offense, but he has looked just strong and fresh, and he's looked really good. I think they've done a good job of, you know, monitoring some of those older guys. But yeah, man, hopefully he can stay healthy, because if he does, he looks like a pretty dominant center right now.
Yeah, he was playing injured last year. I mean, you know, I think the statute is up on that, and they talked about it. I mean, there are some dudes who are playing banged and bruised. Like, it was more for Maurice, but the drop off last season at center, if you didn't have him, I mean, it was just so steep, and it's not a shot at anybody else. I mean, they might have had to move Darius to center, and they don't want to do that in last year's offensive line configuration. But I mean, there was a rep today. I didn't put it in the observations where it's him and Farmer straight up. and there's no movement, which is, I mean, when you think about all the weight that Maurice Smith is giving up in that particular matchup, head to head, and Maurice is able to stymie Farmer, and this is in a pass rush setting, so Farmer's trying to get by him. It's not a run game thing. I took note of that because, last year he did battle through practice as well, Ira. Even though he was banged up, Maurice would battle through a lot of these drills, and you could just see that he had to use guile. He had to use, almost like a judo-like instinct to use somebody's movements against them. He's just so much more sturdy, and his feet are underneath him in a sturdy sense that way. And there are some young guys that are like that too. I was pleased. We always want to be right when we see something in somebody, Ira, whether it's anybody on staff. But when Andre Otto got a shout out last week from Coach Norvell, and he gives him the level of praise that he did, that he's almost like Darius Washington, ascending with his versatility. He's starting to look the size now as well that's necessary to be playing at this level. Like, he looks like it's a natural size, which for a younger player is maybe the last part of the equation. He's extremely impressive, and he's one of those players that I think could be in that double-digit rotation when it's all said and done. Is there anybody else that stands out to you in the trenches that you've seen?
Well, real quick on him, man, they list him at 6'5", 325 pounds, and to think that you could wear 325 like that. Now, I guess, Daryl Jackson's similar. He's even more ripped. But, yeah, man, usually when you think of guys that weigh over 320 pounds, it looks a little sloppy sometimes for offensive linemen, but he's 6'5", and he just looks really good. But he's a guy that caught our attention, to your point, last year. I remember practices where you and I would talk about it. As a true freshman, he would go into some of those battles and one-on-ones and some of the things that they do and just hold his own. Like, it was kind of like watching a young pup, fight the older dog and, not back down. And you saw that in him. And I was always surprised by that because I just didn't know what to expect out of Andre Otto. And Matt Lacer actually had a story up on the site. People can still find it at warchant.com. We posted it earlier today. But, at a high school, Andre Otto had like no offers going into the end of his junior season. I think Florida State saw him at a camp. A couple other schools saw him as well. And there was a point in time where he thought he might go to Princeton. He's a super bright guy and wants to be a filmmaker. And I don't know, man, when they got him to commit last year, I thought it might be a flyer. They like the athleticism. They like the intelligence. But what's he going to look like? He's from Key West. It's not really a bastion of football. Right. You don't see a lot of great football players come out of there. And so I just did not have high expectations for him. And he impressed us last year with some of that what for. And then the way he has just developed, it's super impressive because that group, I think you wrote about in your observations, they've got about 4 or 5 really impressive young offensive linemen that, portend good things for the future.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of an edge to him too today. I won't say which player he went up against, but he beat him. This is the first time I've seen those pass rush drills. I'm not going to do the Chris Collinsworth thing where I go pass rush, where they ran it back several times. Like they did that for Durajaye. I did put that in the observations because Odell Higgins was giving him instructions on how to technically work something. I'm like, all right, so do it again. Otto took on somebody not named Durajaye, I think 3 times in a row. And after the second time winning again, like he's being tested, he starts bobbing his head back and forth before the snap. He's got a little bit of
feeling it a little bit.
He's feeling it a little bit, which is typically something you see from the defensive side of the equation. I mean, Jared Verse was legendary for being ruthless if he won a rep. Jermaine Johnson before him, and even some of the guys now on the defensive line. But he's got a little bit of an edge to him. And it doesn't have to be tonight on the Monday Smash, the Andre Otto Appreciation Hour. But, I mean, I think he embodies the excitement I feel and why I wrote about the future feels bright for this offensive line. I personally had worried about this time last year that where are the answers going to come from in the high school ranks? Like, they're bringing in a lot of transfers that are good, and they're helping the equation, and they're helping each year's team in a short-term sense. But what about the high school ranks? Where are those guys coming from? And now they've got a handful of them. I mean, this reminds me of what the defensive back room was like when you saw Edwin Joseph arrive on campus, when you saw Quindarius Jones and KJ Kirkland. That's not that long ago, but it just felt like they were bringing in a better baseline of player. It seems like that's happening on the offensive line now too.
Yeah, and something I wrote about over the weekend, I'd be curious your take. Like one of the things I wrote about was just how, and I think we may have talked about it last week on the Smash, but like the fact that these young receivers, because I think there's a ton of talent in the young playmaker position too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to me, like at the beginning of camp, my question was like, how quickly can they get those guys ready? Can they get those guys ready to be on the field for the season opener or week 2? That may be overly ambitious, but that doesn't mean those guys can't be bigger players as the season goes on. And and again, I keep thinking back to last year and how this Florida State offense was all, just all guns blazing the season opener. Just 500 yards of offense, 40 something points, just dominated LSU, especially in that second half. But then that was probably about as good as the offense ever looked. Yeah. This year, it may be an offense that looks good early, but gets better and better as you work in those guys. Because I love, Amari Williams. I don't know how much you saw the young skill guys today, but I just love that young skill guys. So just picking back up on the idea that you have really talented young offensive linemen, really talented young secondary. I actually like some of these young linebackers. There's a lot of really nice young players in this team. But as far as this season goes, I think those young skill players on offense may get a chance. I just don't know. Like if you don't see them in the first game or two, I don't think that means you're not going to see them at some point this season.
Yeah, agreed. I walked out of camp today, practice today, more unsure about the immediate future than I did the long-term future. And to your point, the last few years, their 22 is good. Their starting 22 is really good, in fact. And maybe they're starting, their next wave of 6 to 8 players. Like they might have about 30 guys that are capable of achieving what they want to achieve, ACC championship, 13-0, those types of things. But if they suffer 3 or 4 injuries at this one position, I'm not sure what the reserve number is like. Maybe they had 40 guys that could compete at that level. This 85, and I get that the roster is expanding now in the near future, but for now, this group of about 75 or 80 guys, Ira, they're set up to succeed for the long term. I totally agree with you. I feel very good about where they're standing for the future. And if they have a game like Pitt, last year's game, wide receiver, completely devastated by injuries. If they're in that same position this fall in November, let's call it the North Carolina game, they're not without solutions. They're just younger players who are going to need maybe a simpler game plan, but they'll have an answer at receiver this year, like they might not have had last season. And you could apply that to different positions as well. I did see a little bit of Amari Williams, but not a ton. He does move very fluidly, though. Yeah. He should still have a year of high school to go. It's very impressive what he looks like.
Yeah, he didn't get a lot of balls thrown his way in 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, but when you see him moving the way he moves and then how natural he is as a pass catcher, it just really stands out. And I always go back to something Coach Henshaw, George Henshaw, has said to me numerous times when we've had our conversations for Henshaw's house on the site, that if a player is special, like you'll know it. They may not be able to do everything yet. They may not be ready. They may not be big enough, strong enough, whatever. But you usually can see something. You'll see that. And I think, to me, Amari Williams looks different when he's running around and catching a ball than most anybody else I've seen at that position. Somebody asked on the message boards, there was a thread about it, and somebody's like, do you think he could be a future All-American? And I do. Again, he came as a defensive end. Maybe he puts on 30 pounds and ends up over there. But I love what he could be at receiver or at tight end.
It follows the profile. I remember talking to Dominic Robinson about this a year ago. Michael Langston talked about this as well. They love athletes, Ira. They love guys who played all over the field in high school, and they'll figure out where to put you. Like you have a primary position you're being recruited to, but so often when we're going through, like Dominic and I would, for signing day, you've done this with Dominic as well. You go through the huddle tape and he'll talk about what he sees in these highlight reels. But a lot of the time it's two-way players, guys who've been, stars on the other side of the ball than they're going to play in college. And that means that their understanding of the game is at a higher level. Like I saw Cam Davis do something today that I consider to be special. We were standing next to each other in the elephant doors. I don't know how specific I'm allowed to get, but what I'll say is he recognized something and saw something, and he used vision with his explosiveness in a way that you would hope a veteran would do. And then you see the athleticism take over. And that might be his instinct as a running back, but it also might be his instinct from being a quarterback in high school too, a quarterback who ran a lot. It's just there are moments like that. And while I think the most impressive run I saw today was Toafili in that same setting where he was a blur, he just made a move and you lose sight of him. Cam Davis had a very nice highlight that Florida State released. They're well aware of what hype happens when they release something like that on social media, and they did so on Saturday from the scrimmage. He's been impressive. I don't know how they're going to find snaps for him, but my goodness, those tools seem to be coming and showing and presenting more often.
Yeah, and really, again, I think when you look at this offense overall, there were some plays today with Jalen Lucas, and there's a lot of different weapons in this offense. Yeah. So I think the offense is going to be good. Like, I feel, we've all harped so much on the wide receivers, and I don't think it's unfair. I do think that group, you'd like to think that group would be better overall. Malik Benson notwithstanding. You'd like to see more consistency. You'd like to see a little bit more from that group overall, but that doesn't mean this can't be a really, really good offense. I think, as we said, this offensive line can run block. It shows they can pass block. I think DJ is getting more and more comfortable with what they want to do, and I think we're going to see over these next 2 weeks as they really today they did a little bit of installation for Georgia Tech at the very end of practice, but for the most part, the first 85-90% of practice was what they normally do, just like a camp practice. Yep. But I think we're going to see starting now going forward, they're really going to be putting in what they want to do for the Georgia Tech game. And that's going to be good. It's going to be great for him. It's going to be great for those receivers as they kind of like isolate who is part of that game plan and who he likes in different situations. So I think they're going to play a lot better offensively in that game, especially going up against Georgia Tech defense that was terrible, a year ago. No matter how much, even if Georgia Tech's defense is better than it was a year ago, they were one of the worst defenses in the country. They're going up against every day in practice one of the best defenses in the country, I believe strongly. So even if Georgia Tech improves significantly, it's not going to be anything close to what they're seeing every day. So I think people may watch that game against Georgia Tech and feel a lot better about the offense and maybe wondering why we were doing so much hand-wringing during preseason camp.
Yeah, that's the hope is like it validates how good this defense was. Hopefully the offensive performance oh my goodness. Well, and it's almost like if in the first 2 drives Florida State goes down the field and they scored 10 points, but they moved the ball very easily. I think we're all going to look at each other in the press box. Our colleagues, maybe from even different places, are going to go, that bodes well for the season because they had all kinds of problems. And they've continued to have issues stringing things together with consistency. Those are the reports that are coming out. I saw it with my own eyes today. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But we've got past the 20-minute mark. I've got to mention my man, Russ Voorhis, who you saw last week out in Jacksonville. He was checking out a practice, which is great to see. Russ supports Florida State athletics at the highest level. So, of course, he would be welcome to go see a practice, and I'm glad he was able to put his eyes on the team. But he can support you in the insurance game. If you live in the state of Florida, you live in the state of Georgia or Alabama, he's got you covered. State Farm agent Russ Voorhis has brick-and-mortar operations in Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. You can see the phone numbers on the screen if you're watching on Warchant TV. If you're listening on the podcast, Russ Voorhis. Here's how you spell his name, RussVorhis.com. Throw a .com at the end of it, and you'll find Russ Services. If you want to support a Nole and you want some more information on whatever insurance policy that you might need a consultation for, Russ is your guy. And I'm wondering, Ira, did Russ share any thoughts with you at practice last week or anything else about maybe the Warchant response that he's getting right now, support from fellow Noles?
He actually did mention that. He said it's been very consistent, getting one or two new clients basically every week, reaching out, saying they've heard about him on the Smash and letting him know that they're Florida State fans too and they're interested. It also was I got a kick out of I tweeted a picture of Russ and I. We've talked before about Russ as a large human being, and I'm in the 6 foot neighborhood. I've always said I'm 6 feet tall, probably 5'11" and a quarter, maybe something like that. But my man makes me look like a munchkin, and so he was out there, and a few people tweeted things like, buy my insurance policy or else, because we don't want to sick him on you. But no, he does a great job, great business is doing well, and you can. There we go. There's what is he? 5 inches taller, 6 inches taller than me.
Yeah. But finally, Ira, I think he would have been our largest offensive lineman for a good period of time there. And thankfully now he would fall in line and be one of the more diminutive guys. So good job to Florida State recruiting. And, Russ will support any way he knows how. But yeah, he's or any way he possibly can. But I think he's in that 6'4", 6'5" range. And I wonder, in his prime, he probably could have walked on at Florida State and played with that frame.
He actually did in basketball, I believe. But I think basketball was more his sport. But yeah, no, check him out, russvorhees.com. He's a great guy, great Nole. And he and his staff would love to hear from you.
So we'll talk more about Florida State and Florida State camp. I actually want to get into the scout team stuff in just a second. I want to know how much I'm going to ask Ira on the fly here, like we're behind the scenes. How much can I say? But we'll do that in 15 seconds right here on the Monday Smash.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
This could quite possibly be the last Monday Smash in its current time slot before Florida State plays a college football game this season, because we're going to be traveling to Dublin next week, and so the clocks are going to get all kinds of messed up. We appreciate you always happening by here on a Monday night on Warchant TV. Stay tuned to warchant.com's social media. If you're a subscriber to warchant.com, stay tuned to the Tribal Council. We'll give you an idea of when the Smash will reconvene, but likely if it does, before we kick off against Georgia Tech, it'll be from Dublin, which is very, very exciting. Ira, it was a long time coming, and now it feels like this trip is happening very, very fast. Do you have everything planned? Are you somebody who takes days to pack? Are you a last-second packer? Do you have an itinerary and a list and a to-do box? Like, how does it work for you?
Well, usually I'm traveling by myself, and I'm a little bit more kind of let's go with the flow.
Yeah,
Kim's coming on this trip. We're doing a little bit more planning. In fact, we watched, I don't know how many YouTube videos last night of people giving their tours of Galway and giving their tours of different sites. And so we're trying to get a feel for what we want to see, what she wants to see. And no, it's going to be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it. When we went last summer, thanks again to our partners with Aer Lingus and the college football game. It was kind of a quick schedule. We had some things we had to get to. This is going to be really nice to just kind of see some sights and sounds. I know a lot of people are wondering when the team is going to get there. They're actually, from what I understand, there's two ways to do these kinds of trips when these teams, college and NFL teams, play overseas. Some of the NFL teams want to be there for like a full week. Sometimes they'll go just for a couple of days. It sounds like a lot of teams feel like it's better to just kind of get there, get acclimated, and play as opposed to be there for a long time. So Florida State and Georgia Tech both will be flying in on Thursday. Florida State will be leaving Wednesday night. They'll get there Thursday morning. They'll practice that day, and they'll practice again then maybe walk through the next day, and then they'll play the game. So I don't think there's going to be a sense of necessarily a huge change for their bodies. I think they've got it planned out where it's going to almost feel like they were playing a game at Florida State. The only thing is they slept. Hopefully they slept through the night on that flight over on Wednesday night.
And I've got the overnight flight. I'm hoping we can do that. It's a 6.5, 7 hour flight from where I'm departing. But that getting your body clock ready, that was something that I believe was at Stanford had an excuse for in the 2014 college football playoff show. That will be a big challenge. But one thing that's going to be very fun is when we get over there, we get settled. This is an announcement for everybody who's been asking and everybody who's been wondering. A couple of points of clarification and an announcement. Warchant is going to have a meet and greet, everybody, and it's going to be on Friday, the day before the game. This is August 23rd. It's at the Old Storehouse in Temple Bar. Temple Bar is a region of Dublin. There is a Temple Bar, but don't confuse that with the region called Temple Bar in Dublin. The Old Storehouse is where we're going to be set up next week on Friday. It says currently on the app, and we're getting this fixed, that it's a ticketed event. We thought we were going to need some crowd control. I've been assured by Colin, go figure, Ira, the bar's owner's name of the Old Storehouse is Colin, assures me the capacity is upwards of 1,500 people, and they will have security at the door. No tickets needed, however. No tickets needed. So the Old Storehouse in Temple Bar is where we're going to have our meet and greet on Friday night. It's going to start around 6 p.m. Irish time. 6 p.m. Irish time. So for those of you that are out there on Warchant TV wondering what we're doing, and those of you listening on the podcast, there is the information for you.
I like when you mentioned security is going to be there, and I look down and I see Russ's picture, and I'm thinking, is Russ going to be the bouncer? I mean, maybe he could take care of the crowd control. So, are you guys going to be doing a show then? Is JCS doing a show from that venue?
We will have a live JCS from 6 to 8 while the meet and greet's going on. But I'm sure we can wrestle maybe one or two of y'all away to sit down with Jeff and preview the game and feel the atmosphere. Weather permitting, I think we're going to be setting up in the beer garden, which will be, I'm sure, a balmy 60 degrees, which will be fantastic. For all of you guys who've been going to all these practices, that has to sound like, I mean, just manna from heaven, Ira.
I was just telling my wife that yesterday. I was just saying, like, we're going to have like 9 or 10 days where the highs are going to be in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, we may get a little sprinkle here or there, may get some wet weather as well. But no, I'm really looking forward to it. It's I think today it was around 100 in Tallahassee. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that weather over there.
So when it comes to scout team, Ira, can I say who's on scout team? Is that allowed?
I did say one player on scout team in the rap. I mentioned that Trevor Jackson, the quarterback, is kind of mimicking Haynes King, and I think that's okay. I think Mike Norvell won't get mad at us. I mean, he is, ostensibly your scout team quarterback. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how far you could go on that.
So here's what I'll say this, and if you want to say the kid's name, you can. Just watching the offense go against the scout team today. So this is Florida State's first team offense. I'm looking at that defensive backfield for the scout team. They're going to be challenged at receiver even then, Ira. I mean, it's unbelievable the slotting of players that there are who they're so deep at that specific position. The receivers are going to have a bit of a break, but not really. There was a player who was named early on in camp, maybe just before camp, who was said, man, they had an excellent offseason, who's a new arrival. He's on scout team. There is no rest for the weary, Ira, at some of these positions when they're going against the scout group.
No, you're right, man. And for people who don't, if you haven't been to a college football practice, the way it works is generally the two deep depth chart, those guys are definitely going to be together. And some of the third team guys will be with that main unit, like the guys that are going to rotate in. Then everybody else pretty much goes over to the scout team. And they'll, from week to week, they'll be mimicking what the other team does. And it's good if you've got good players at that level. It gives you a good look, as opposed to if you've got really weak players. If you just put all walk-ons and players who couldn't really play on the scout team, your main offense defense aren't getting great looks. But yeah, man, that was one of the things I really wanted to watch today was who ends up on the scout team, because you've got really good players on offense and defense. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because there were a couple of plays today with the first team offense where you look at the ball go up in the air and you think, yeah, it looked like a normal route. It did not look like a scout team route.
No, and it went up. I'm like, well, that's a heck of a play by the number of the player. I'm like, who the hell? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Florida State. This isn't 2 years ago where the scout team did what the scout team wanted to do, and there's little that you could do about it. Now all these little details matter more. It makes the offense more efficient, because if you're off by a step, Mike Norvell was talking to one of the receivers who's in that first group, and he was meticulous about where to line up. Like, all these little details, they're going to matter more, because if you're one step out of alignment, like, these players across from you are good enough to make a difference. And these are the incremental things, Ira, that make a team better as the season goes along. Like last year, it felt like, to your point, the offense was at its apex early. Maybe the second half of Duke and the Wake Forest game, but they weren't fully healthy in either of those situations. But there were brief moments where in those situations against Duke and Wake, you felt like the offense was about at the level that it was against LSU. But it was more about maintenance and holding on rather than growing and getting better. This group has a chance to get better as the season goes along. And the schedule is it's not a perfectly easy schedule, but it does lay out fairly well, where you play a couple of games, you get a bye week to collect yourself. You play 3 more, you get a bye week to collect yourself. You could see a chance where this offense evolves and gets better as the year goes along.
Yeah, no, I think, there's going to be challenging games in this first month. I think Georgia Tech will be a challenge. I think Memphis will be a challenge. SMU certainly will be a challenge. But if you can get through those games, that next stretch is really, going to be your toughest games. You're talking about Clemson, you're talking about at Miami, you're talking about at Notre Dame. Those are going to be really tough games. I think even SMU is going to be a really tough game as well. So if you can get, again, like the last 2 years when you had LSU so early in the season, you had to be ready from day one. this is different. Not that you can take Georgia Tech lightly, but you still have some time, I think, to be operating on all cylinders, and I think that's what we're going to see.
Time to start taking a look at some questions here on the Monday Smash. Questions from you, the Warchant TV audience. If you're just joining us, welcome in. This is Warchant TV. We cover Florida State better than anybody in the business. If you haven't been by warchant.com, there is a multimedia code. This is specific to y'all. They've shut down all the other codes, but this one's for you. 2 months for $1. 2 months of access to warchant.com for $1 if you use the code FSU1. That's FSU and the number 1. Head over to warchant.com. Give us a chance to earn your business moving forward. You're going to be thrilled with what you see coverage-wise at warchant.com. But if you're just happening by and you want to ask us a question, throw it in the chat right now. Let's take our first one. Director Ben behind the scenes. We'll put it up on the screen. Island Chief. Oh, for me. Okay. What is the most different, the biggest difference in the trenches since you last witnessed? It's the depth on the offensive line, without a doubt. I'm watching Lucas Simmons. I'm watching Andre Otto. I was very impressed with Jonathan Daniels' size and his aptitude. Manasseh Ititi is a large human being and very athletic, Ira.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got reserves now in the very near future that are very talented.
He stands out to me. To be a true freshman, to be that size, and look at his body. I remember some of the I was talking to James Coleman. All the former FSU running backs are going to get referenced tonight. I was talking to James Coleman over at the Jacksonville practices, and we were talking about Manasseh and how the first recruiting pictures we saw of him were, and I think maybe he had seen him in person, but like the first pictures I saw him a couple years ago or a year and a half ago, I just was like, it's a project. Man, he has come a long way, and he looks, as you said, he is very athletic. I've tweeted a few weeks ago some of the clips of him playing basketball. I mean, he is an athlete, and he's got great size. And if he's got a mean streak, that's one thing it's hard to know yet. But if he has that mean streak that you've seen out of, you mentioned Petty, Darius Washington, you wrote about today. You're seeing some of that, or those guys. If he has that too, yeah, man, he could be a star.
Darius plays meaner. There was a rep, not to give all the observations away on the show tonight, but there's a rep where Aaron Hester immediately, he means business, and Hester has to play like that anyway. But the pads pop. They're locked. They're locked in battle now, and it's Aaron's trying to get Darius's hands off of him. But both the defensive line and the offensive line are going, woo, oh man, this is not one. It was a different level than all the other reps. The other ones were fine, but this one had a little extra juice to it. And Darius is just, I don't know that he would have done that a year ago. I don't know that he would have done that a couple of years ago. Like, he might have handled the rep, but there wouldn't have been that extra snarl to it. And Darius plays with that. And if he can impart that down the line to some of these younger guys, that's all the better. But it's phenomenal to see how deep this group is. And again, for me, I don't know that I always shared this publicly, but I was concerned with where's the reserves coming from that are not in the transfer portal. And that question has been answered now. So thank you, Island Chief, for that question. I think that's the biggest difference. Next up here on the Monday Smash is a question from Greg Turner. Fryer, Gibson, and McCoy, how are things going with them? Okay. So he wants to know about the freshman receivers. What do you think, Ira? You've seen more of them than me.
Yeah, and Elijah Moore's in there also, obviously. It's a great group, man. I touched on it earlier. That's a really good group of freshman wide receivers. I think McCoy and Elijah Moore have been the standouts so far in terms of in team competition drills. And I think part of that's because of their, McCoy is just very polished. He's a very polished wide receiver and is very athletic and has good hands, and he looks good all around. Moore obviously has the great size, also really fluid for 6'4", and is a good pass catcher. He's a little bit more up and down probably at times than McCoy, but you can see the talent, looks really good. Fryer, to me, I think is going to be a star at some point down the road. His hands are exceptional. I've seen him make, between the spring and in this preseason camp, I've seen him make a few catches that I really haven't seen anybody else make around here in a long time. He's just got, if the ball touches his fingertips, you feel like there's a great chance he's going to bring it down. I think Mike Norvell mentioned he was a little bit limited earlier in preseason. So, we'll see. And he's not 6'4". He's not, he doesn't have that natural, just huge size advantage that Elijah Moore does. And BJ Gibson has been impressive. where I like him most so far is you see some of the baseball skills. He's a big time baseball player. When on some of the deep balls, and he's got a good feel for some of that stuff. I don't know that he's because he's not 6'4", and because he's probably not as polished as William McCoy. I would say he might be a little bit behind those guys, but he looks really talented too. I love that entire freshman receiver core.
Related question from Colton: over under 5 touchdowns, 5 receiving touchdowns for true freshman receivers this season. You want to be bold and take the over?
That's tough. That's a good number. It's a good number, Colton. I would. So they only have really like one layup. They only have one game where it's a couple of these other games could get out of hand. I'll say under, but I want to say over.
It
I'll
depends.
probably say under.
I think it depends on one, Elijah Moore being trusted more and more as a red zone guy. That could be he could be a specialist role. Good number though, Colton. Ira wanted to pull the trigger, but he couldn't quite do it.
Couldn't do it.
Good evening, Carol. Carol asks a question from Facebook, and she says, good evening. Oh, well, that must be why I said that. So are we ready for Georgia Tech? I'm ready for some Seminole football. What are your thoughts about DJ at this point? Who would you compare him to with any of the past Seminole quarterbacks?
Ooh, that's a good
question. Good questions.
Yeah, that's a tough one. He's unlike this is going back a little bit, man. And it's not. I don't know. I was kind of thinking, and this is like a healthy Fabian Walker.
Okay.
Before Fabian had shoulder problems, he just never was the same guy. But there was a time where Fabian looked really, really impressive. I think he was one of the top quarterbacks in the country coming out of high school. But it's hard to, it's there's not a lot of comparisons. First of all, Florida State, I don't know if they've had a quarterback that size and that athletic. Have they? I mean,
they might have had not at that height, but they wanted to with Kendra.
He's 250 pounds and he can run, man. And you saw a little bit of it today. Like, we can't talk about plays, and we can't. Sometimes it's hard to describe, but like when they call a play for him to run, like, it's there. He wants it, and it's got potential.
If he can get a few steps in front of where he starts, then he has the instincts of a runner. That doesn't mean that he's going to be breaking open for 30-yard runs. It's just that he has an idea. Some quarterbacks, when they run, you fear for them as you're watching them run. They have no idea how to avoid people. They have no feel for somebody who's bearing down on them and is going to light them. DJ, he knows what he's doing when he's running with the football. So, we've seen that in his Oregon State film, especially. I thought there were some key plays last year where he showed that. I don't know that there's a comp for him, but he just reminds me of an NFL type quarterback. That would be almost an old school NFL type quarterback when everything was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, with a little bit of athleticism to him. But he's got a cannon for an arm. Right. He wants to operate from the pocket. He's refined at those particular things. It feels like you have an NFL style quarterback. I'm not trying to say it about draft position for him. It just feels kind of old school Sundays kind of stuff.
He's got it's weird. Like, there are certain throws. He made a couple throws today where it's like, wow, he'll have those wow throws. But again, it's hard to judge him, overall, because going back to our conversation from earlier, like this passing game, because of all the production you lost and the players, you have new players coming in, younger players trying to step up. And, you've probably had a couple of guys dinged up at different times, and you have a new quarterback, and you're going up against what we think is going to be a great defense, certainly a great secondary. It's just hard to evaluate what he's going to look like on Saturdays.
Yeah.
But I think, man, again, I'm excited about him. I want to see what it looks like. I think what you're going to see, what I probably thought coming out of the spring, and I still probably feel today, is there will be times where you're like, oh man, I wish he would have hit that throw. But I also look, his completion percentage is what it is. He's not a 70% completion guy. But I do think there's also going to be a few throws every game where you're like, wow, that was huge. And now you just need the receiver to come down with the play.
Yeah, the best of him. This reminds me, I did a third and lang on this a couple of years ago when they were taking on Clemson.
Yeah.
And DJ was the quarterback. His best throws, let's just, he's healthy the whole year and he plays and Florida State has success and the receivers, win battles against a secondary not named the Seminoles secondary that they're going against in camp. The mashup of his best throws is going to be breathtaking. Like the best of DJ is every bit 5-star, every bit NFL ready quarterback. It's just, it's stringing those things together and making that the overwhelming part of a game. Like if he's hot for a game, Ira, and he goes, 17-21, I mean, people are going to hype him up because when he's at his best, he's very, very good. So we'll see. We'll see how many peaks and valleys there are this season, Carol, but we thank you for the question. Next up on the Smash, a question from Thomas Smith. What does the defensive end rotation look like? Can Lamont Green see any action? So he wants to know about Boots. Adam Fuller spoke today that he believes that there's 4 or 5 guys. Like, this is how we have to skirt the thing, and Thomas, I don't know that we can necessarily tell you, here's your starters, here's your 2 deep. But what do you think, Ira? Adam Fuller did indicate that he likes 4 or 5 players of that rotation this year.
I mean, look, man, common sense. You don't have to be at a practice to know that Marvin Jones, Patrick Payton, Sione Lolohea are 3 guys that are definitely going to be in there. They're all conference type players. We're not breaking anything. Georgia Tech knows those guys are going to be out there playing. Byron Turner obviously has played a lot. He was in that top 4 or 5 last year, so you figure he's probably in that mix. And then you got to go from there and figure out who kind of works in there. I think that you mentioned earlier, Aaron Hester's a guy that could be in there. I think Lamont Green has got the athletic ability. He was been banged up at times, earlier when he got here. I think he wasn't available a whole lot last year. So he is definitely twitchy. It's hard to know whether or not he's going to be ready to help much this year. But as you said, Adam Fuller said today, they've got 4, maybe 5 that they feel really good about. And I think honestly, it wouldn't shock me. They really like these defensive tackles. And I think Durajaye, as everybody knows, is a guy that's in that group of defensive tackles, but can play end. I think they've got maybe 1 or 2 other guys that could be a big end. If they want to do that, like they did last year, sometimes with Fisk is a big end. So I think they'll have other options there, but I think everybody knows who those first 3 or 4 guys are for sure.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. So maybe not yet for Lamont, but we'll see. I mean, these things develop over the course of a season. Justin,
he's definitely. I mean, there's no doubt he is twitchy and could be a factor. It's just a matter of staying healthy and getting bigger. I think those are the biggest things for him.
If they didn't get Marvin, I would almost say that maybe in third and obvious, there might be a path for him earlier on, but I mean, they've got some explosive dudes. It's a nice problem to have. Justin, can FSU afford to take a loss from a really good Clemson, Miami, or Notre Dame, or from an okay BC and still get in the playoffs, where UGA and Bama can afford to lose 2 or 3 games and get in? So projecting 2 losses, 1 from the collection of Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, and then 1 from a team the caliber of Boston College. If they don't win the ACC, I don't know that I think the committee would put in a 4-loss Ole Miss over Florida State with that resume. That's my personal feeling, Ira. I don't know what yours is.
Hey man, Reese Davis had FSU number 6 in the AP top 25. Did that make you feel better? No, not at all. I don't know, man. It's so hard to say. But to your point, yeah, I think everybody that follows Florida State feels strongly that you cannot let anything be up to the committee to give you benefit of the doubt in any circumstance. And I know some people have suggested or theorized that maybe FSU will get a payback, a kind of a make good this year if they're borderline. I don't see it. I mean, I think I think money talks, and I think those SEC and Big Ten schools are going to get in, and so Florida State needs to take care of business and not lose to Boston College or something like that.
If they lost to Boston College and they lost to Clemson and they beat Florida, but Florida somehow went 8-4 with that schedule, they put Florida in over Florida State, even with a head-to-head loss. I'm telling you, man. I'm sorry about that, Justin, but it feels like that's sour grapes, but I think it also feels right. So appreciate the question. Next up here on the Smash is a question from Briley. Briley, do you expect us to run the ball north of 55% of the time, and do you expect us to average more than 32.5 points per game? Okay. First of all, Ira, I'll put a stipulation on that first part of the question. Non-garbage time situations, because if you count garbage time, there's going to be a lot more running, obviously, because you're done. I would say at any rate, yeah, even outside of garbage time, I think they're going to run more than 55% of the time. And Ira, I'll do you one better. I think if you're talking about plays that have RPO elements to them, that might be 70% of the time, maybe even more. The run is the centerpiece of this offense. Would you agree with that?
I do 100%. And I think that really fits well with DJ's skill set. I mean, I think he not only is he a weapon that they have to be concerned about, I think he really runs the zone read stuff well. I think he is so strong and athletic that, I think a lot of those RPO things that turn into passes, I think will be there for him. He can hit the wide side of the field. I mean, I think it's going to suit him really well. And so, yeah, I definitely would put that over there. And I think they're going to be over that number offensively too. I think I'm looking for this defense to do more in terms of not just creating opportunities, but maybe scoring. Yeah. I just think there's playmakers on that side of the ball. And so, I'll be shocked if Florida State's not averaging well over, I think it's going to be a team offense, but also a team that's averaging closer to 40, high 30s per game.
I think I don't know if I'm quite that bullish, but I would agree with you on how they get there. So I think this offense, if you just put them in neutral field position circumstances, so they're getting the ball around 25, 30 yard line the whole game, I think it's fair to expect 24 to 28 points out of the offense. I don't know, maybe you think that might be a little bit rich, but if you factor in the defense giving them the short fields or outright scoring or special teams making a difference, and these things are all related. You can't put an offense in a vacuum like I just did. I think that's how you get there. That's how you arrive into the 30s. Whereas last year's offense, I think if it was healthy and you put it on their own 20 or 25 yard line, you should expect 35 to 40 points a game from that offense. I think this one's closer to probably 24 to 28. If they're going to go over 32.5, it's because the defense helps a lot. Yeah. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's going to be an efficient offense in terms of when you get scoring opportunities. The other thing that we don't really ever see in practice that we don't factor into the equation is Mike Norvell is a play caller and game planner that is a difference maker, man. Like that, we're seeing them run their base stuff against the defense's base stuff. And a lot of times the defense knows what's coming. Man, I think he's going to scheme up some stuff every game. I'm excited to see this overall team. I'm looking for this offense to look better than maybe what we saw in camp.
There was a sequence today we can't tell you about specifically, but he called a few things in a row and they didn't hit him. And I'm like, damn it, it was there. Like in terms of Mike, the play caller, said, all right, the first play, yes. The second play, something was there. And I don't know why it didn't happen, but I saw that. I wonder if Mike will break that out because they still do situational stuff with good on good, even when they get into the installation parts of their practices. Next question in the last about 5 to 10 minutes here of the Monday Smash. We'll see if we can get to everybody who asked questions. Who are going to be Ed, I don't know that we can answer that specifically. Who are going to be the top 3 receivers? I think I can't answer that. I think Malik Benson is going to be one of your top 3 receivers. I think Ja'Kai Douglas has been talked about enough. And I think Kyle Morlock is going to be one of your top 3 receivers. What do you think, Ira?
Yeah, I definitely think Malik Benson and Kyle Morlock will be 2 of your top 3 receivers. I think the other one, it could be Toafili. It could be Roydell Williams. It could be one of the receivers you mentioned. It could be, Jaylen Brown. I mean, who knows? I mean, I just think that there's I think it's going to be a pretty wide cast of characters, depending on the games, depending on matchups, depending on who is a good fit for that game plan. But yeah, I think Benson and Morlock, I think are most sure things to be in that top 3.
Thank you for the question, Godfather Ed. Next up is from Jam and 2 Shirts. Would you like to see more neutral site games throughout Florida in the future? Being in Orlando and seeing packed stadiums each time FSU comes by is a delight. You've been inside those environments, Ira. These last few times I've been doing either an in-game watch-along or a post-game show. So I'm not there to see that, but it certainly did feel special for the LSU game that Florida State, quasi-hosted last year. And I remember that Ole Miss game apparently was awesome as well in 2016. What do you think? Is that a good? Do you want to do that? Do you want to get in the car and drive throughout the state of Florida? / is it a good idea to continue to do? What do you think?
I think they're awesome. I think both those games you just mentioned were a lot of fun. I thought the USF game in Tampa, I know like a lot of people were mad that FSU would play a game at USF, but I thought that was awesome for the fans in Tampa to have that game.
Oklahoma game was good. Looked like
the Oklahoma game was good. Yeah, I mean, anytime they've been in Jacksonville for a bowl game. So yeah, man, I'm all for it. I think it's good for the fan base. I also get it from a financial standpoint. It's a challenge. If you take it out of Doak Campbell Stadium, you've got to make that much money wherever you go. Or if you buy out, like back in the old days, they would buy out Duke and move a game down here, or buy out some other team and play them in Florida in one of those cities. That's harder to do. You don't see that as much anymore. But I think I'd love to see it. I think it's good for recruiting. But I also know that it's a challenge. And then obviously anytime you move a game out of Tallahassee, especially if it's a home game, the merchants, the people that, run the stores, the restaurants, nobody cares about the hotel or people. I understand it, but really all those businesses, it's a big hit if they lose one of those 6 or 7 home weekends. So there's something to balance there, but I love those games too.
My hope, I think the idea of buying it out or setting up a game with a lower level team to do that might be a good idea, or taking the spring game on the road like they have a couple of times might be a good idea. Just if you're going to spend that much money on the stadium and redoing everything, I think you might as well wear it out over the next few years. Let's see who's next here on the Monday Smash. It is Wes. Hey, what's up, Wes? The Villages. What's up, Tom and Ira? Who was the last player you were as excited to see on the field as Jalen Lucas? Reminder to chat. Remind the chat to smash the like button. Go Noles. Yeah, absolutely. Hit the thumbs up button underneath this video. We do appreciate your support. Helps us find more Florida State fans just like you who are out there. Jalen Lucas, that speed, that potential weapon. Last time Ira was this excited to see somebody like that was when?
I'm going to go all the way back to Keon Coleman 1 year ago. No, in a different way. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I'll try to divert it more towards like a dynamic kind of a guy with that body type. He's different. To me, I think he's going to be a bigger part of things than Kermit Whitfield. Like Kermit was super exciting because he was obviously track speed and similar in that sense, diminutive guy, but. Lucas, I think, is a better overall football player, at least in this system. I'll say this real quick. So I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, I don't know, and this isn't a knock on Jimbo. It's just the way Jimbo ran his offense. He wanted guys that were going to fit his offense. Like Mike Norvell sees a Jalen Lucas and says, oh my gosh, I can use that guy in this way, this way, and this way. I think Mike Norvell might have used Kermit Whitfield a little bit more different. So it's not fair to say Jalen's a better football player.
Right.
I think the way Mike Norvell sees an offense is a little bit different. One little tidbit I thought was a pretty funny comment today. Somebody was asking Malik Benson. It was like during a break. They were doing some special team stuff outside, and some other guys were coming inside. And somebody asked Malik Benson, hey, are you going to return kicks? And he turned around. And he goes, yeah, I will. I will. I'm going to try to. He goes, but they got that guy. And he pointed, it was Lucas was out there returning kicks. And, he's already got, I think, 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns in his college career. So it's not just what he's going to do on offense. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch him on special teams too.
He wasn't an offensive player initially, but Carlos Williams would be one for me. Mm-hmm. That was when I heard he was moving to running back. I was like, oh, man, this could be really fun. And he had his moments, and certainly he did in the NFL as well. Just breakaway speed. Recently, though, just from being at practice, because you get to see Jalen Lucas, when I came down for spring, I'm like, what is all this hoopla about? We've seen some fast players around here. And then I think it was the period 3. It might have been in red zone, and they ran something to Lucas. Oh, my God, that's a little bit different. But when Trey Benson ran by us early in his career, when he was first cleared, the sound he made as he ran by us, I would hope he stays healthy, that I can see whatever that becomes. And it panned out. It was actually really, really exciting. So thanks for that question, Wes. And we will remind people again, subscribe to the channel, absolutely free. Hit the like up button underneath the video. Last few questions, rapid fire. Don. Hey, what's up, Don? How's it going? Is Jalen Lucas going to give us flashbacks of Dexter Carter?
That's not a bad comparison. I feel like Dexter's a little bit bigger. I mean, Dexter was not big, but I think he's bigger than Jalen Lucas. But I'll tell you what, man. You know what's cool about both those guys is because they're smaller dudes, is they've got a little bit of edge on them.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have seen back in the spring, we saw Jalen Lucas kind of get into some tussles.
Yeah.
And that has not stopped. He's not backing down from anybody. And Dexter Carter, of course, was the guy that put the flag on Bernard Clark's helmet. So they both have a similar edge. There's a little comparison there.
Yeah, it's also they're not afraid to be right in front of your face and fight you, but then they also can hide behind the line very well because they're little guys. It's a hard weapon to figure for a defense. Last couple of questions here on the Monday Smash. Florida Man, Alabama. Is there an official Warchant drink? They want a bingo card for Dublin, aka Guinness and Collins local Irish whiskey at O'Malley's. I'm going to have to lean on Ira for some of this. My family's been there a bunch. I never have, so I have a couple of places I want to hit. One of them.
I wonder if we should maybe we should come up with that, like a Warchant bingo card for when you're over there, because we had a good time, and Jeff's been there I think multiple times, so he has some good information. But I think man. All of those pubs are cool. I mean, they're just all cool. Like, we're going to go to one that our guy Scott, who kind of showed us around Dublin, called the Bridge, which was it's owned by some some Irish rugby players.
Certainly not.
No, some Irish rugby players, and I guess there's a few of those pubs that are owned, and so they just the whole pub feels like an Irish rugby like fan club or a clubhouse or something. So those places are cool. Man, it's just we didn't go everywhere, but in everywhere we went, we had a great time. So it's a good idea. Maybe we could come up with something like that, but I don't think you can go wrong. Everywhere we went was awesome.
If there's a Major League Baseball pub over there, Ira, the Thursday that we're out there, the Orioles and the Mets play at 9:00 Irish time. 4 o'clock back in the States. So just if there's an MLB pub out there, maybe we should go have a pint and watch our two teams battle.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, on the diamond. Last question tonight is going to be from Johnny Buckets. What a name. I like that. Who's LB2 with DJ Lundy? Cam or Blake? I assume Blake will play a lot and third down for passing defense. Go Noles. They've got situational weapons. That's one way to answer this question is down and distance. I think you were going to have your two main guys out there last year. If you had a third player on the field, DJ Lundy would come out and play. Maybe in goal line, DJ Lundy would be out there with Tatum Bethune. But I think you were largely going to stay with Tatum and Kalen DeLoach in most situations. This year, Ira, I think it's going to be situationally based. What say you?
I think it will to some degree, but I also think they feel like a lot of those guys can play in any situation. So, I mean, I really think that top 5 or so group of linebackers, you may see, I wrote this the other day, like you may see a bunch of different groups out there. I think Cam Riley, if I was picking, this is not what it's going to be, but if I was picking, I'd probably lean towards just on experience and ability, Cam Riley and DJ Lundy. I mean, those guys have both played a ton of college football. But Blake, I mean, we wrote about in the observations today, as back-to-back tackles for loss for Blake, where he just sees it and triggers. Cryer's had a really good camp. Omar Graham looks good again. He had a sack today.
Yep, a sack in 11 on 11. He did a good job. They didn't see it coming.
I know.
Yeah.
That was. I was glad you mentioned it, because I don't think Corey did mention it in his observations. I was glad you did mention it, because it was definitely in my notes. It was kind of a little delay, but it was a really nice sack. So he can play, and that whole group. I mean, that's a good group, and I think, it's not just coach speak, man. They've been talking those guys up. I think it's a really solid group of linebackers, and I think again, my choice just based on size, strength, and experience would be probably DJ and Cam, but it wouldn't surprise me if you see all those guys out there a ton. I also think Mike Norvell mentioned this. I think he mentioned it over the weekend. It might have been in one of the interviews last week, but he said, you may see us, or it might have been Adam Fuller, that you may see us with more 3 linebackers. And I think when you think about who you're opening the season with, the Georgia Tech team that really is going to want to run the ball, has a really dynamic quarterback running the ball, it might make sense to maybe, see if they can prove they can throw the ball. If not, maybe go with another linebacker. So I think you're going to see all those guys play a lot, man. That's a good group. I mean, it really is a good group. I'm not saying it's, one of the all-time great linebacking cores of Florida State, but I think it's a really solid group.
Yeah, they're legitimately jazzed for them. And that's one thing, like there's a drill in the middle of the field, at one portion of practice where the running backs and linebackers go head up. And that hadn't been really something that was a headliner thing. But now, with all the running backs they have and all the linebackers they have, it's a good drill to catch over at practice. Bonus question from Greg Turner, because I just want to answer this. KJ Sampson, is he ready for action this year? Yeah. Adam Fuller said in the 6-man defensive tackle rotation, they have 6 invites out. They could rescind the invites for these players to be a part of the rotation, but KJ would make that cut in that top 6. He's explosive. This is why I wanted to brag on him, at least for today. I haven't seen a ton of practices, but for his size and the position he plays, KJ every once in a while can rise up and make an explosive play from the interior. He's impressive, and Braden Fisk said he was going to do it, so I believed it immediately, and because Braden usually gets these things right.
Yeah, it's funny. 2 years ago, I think we liked some things we saw at Daniel Lyons as a true freshman.
Yes.
You knew he wasn't ready, but we saw some nice glimpses. Last year, I think I felt the same way. We probably felt the same way about KJ Sampson, and now I think they've pushed each other to a higher level. Like KJ is really coming. Yes, 100% he can play. And I think Daniel Lyons, has had to raise his game because early in camp, I'll be honest, man, I thought KJ looked a little bit better than Daniel Lyons. But Daniel Lyons has now had a really good week or week and a half. They're talking him up, but that's great. That's exactly what you want. Now you've got a much deeper defensive tackle room. Look, man, when Fisk went to the NFL, think about what they lost from that group last year. Fisk, Fabian Lovett, then you had Dennis Briggs and Malcolm Ray, 2 of your nice depth pieces. I mean, like that was a room that was a little bit concerned about the depth coming into this year, but Grady Kelly can play, Durjai can play. That is a solid. If you got 6 defensive tackles, man, you're feeling pretty good about things, and I think they feel good about things.
Grady, I mean, I'm impressed with Grady. He hit the gym this offseason, which you knew he would. I mean, you get in here, you get with Coach Storms, that's what's going to happen. But he had an impressive day today, I thought. So coming up on warchant.com, tons of more coverage. Florida State is starting to install for Georgia Tech, the storylines that come with that. Practice, they're back out there tomorrow morning. Wake Up Warchant will be in your podcast feeds before that happens. You can find it here on Warchant TV, but also wherever you get your podcast. Wake Up Warchant will be ready for you before practice commences tomorrow. Seminole Headlines comes your way on Warchant TV and in your podcast feeds tomorrow. The live version of the show begins at 1 o'clock from the studios of 93.3. All 3 guys are in person for this week's show. And then, Ira, on the website, anything that you want to preview outside of these fantastic trench observations that are on the front page right now over the next day on the site?
Yeah, you definitely want to go read those. But no, we'll have plenty more coverage coming, including some looking ahead to Georgia Tech. Man, we're leaving in 5 days, Tom. We're leaving in 5 days. Well, after tonight, I guess. It's 6 days right now, but about 5.5 days, we're going to be getting on a plane, heading over to Ireland, and then the game will be just a few days after that. So it's so close you can smell it. So yeah, we're going to start looking ahead to Georgia Tech and some of the key matchups in that game, and got some other stuff cooking as well. So come by. I think Michael's got some recruiting stuff in there as well. Tough L today. The Petty kid ended up committing to Georgia Tech, which we've been hearing he was leaning that way, but there's other guys on the horizon. There's more fish in the sea, and Michael has some recruiting stuff coming as well.
And you never know. That transfer portal is a hell of a thing, Ira. These things are never over. Always leave the kids in good graces. Yeah. For Director Ben behind the scenes, who did a wonderful job, thank you, Director. For Ira Schafel, my name is Tom Lang. Thanks to State Farm agent Russ Voorhis for sponsoring this program. And Briley, no more scrimmages. There you go. I answered your question just before we hit the buzzer tonight. They're done with scrimmages. The next time they really, really suited up is for the game against Georgia Tech. Stay tuned to warchant.com for more coverage. Remember, 2 months for $1 with the code FSU1. 2 months for $1 with the code FSU1. And like and subscribe here to Warchant TV, as it is always free. For Ira, I am Tom. Good night, everybody, and we will talk to you next time on Warchant TV.